News. This is George Avedon and Milton Marmonides. Thank you for joining us. We certainly have a lot going on this morning. We'll take a quick check of the futures down 2.75 at 1953.25. We'll certainly get into the levels, what we're seeing, what we're anticipating today. A quick review of yesterday's markets. We have the Dow Jones finishing at 1699.991.19, just down slightly 0.10%. S&P 500 at 1964.82, down 0.16%. Nasdaq with the largest percent loser at 44.54.80, down 0.47%. It was a risk-on trade in the morning yesterday, a bit of a slow deterioration during the day, and just finished slightly negative. So kind of an interesting day yesterday, to say the least. So a few things going on overseas, specifically geopolitical, macroeconomic news. Certainly a lot happening. So we'll jump right into everything. Something that came out yesterday, as the airstrikes over Syria continue with ISIS, ISIL. There are reports that of Turkey, where there could be fighting in Turkey. This is a NATO Article 5, which is the Washington Treaty issue, where it basically states that if you hurt one, you hurt us all type of situation. So again, really monitoring that. That should read the HK protests actually seem to be calming. So there seems to be some calming in Hong Kong. We'll delete that line there. Keeping an eye on Ukraine, Russia. We discussed a lot about what the sanctions are doing for Russia, and what the war has done for the Ukrainian economy and the Eastern European economies. So that's been in talk more and more recently. Russian economy and their policies have been a topic of conversation in the last few days, which I find really fascinating. Let's move on. So a few things that we're looking for this morning. POMO at 0.25 to 0.35 billion. That should be a billion. So we've seen a slight decrease in the POMO. Again, QE is ending later this year. We'll get into what that could mean for the overall markets and rates. Anticipating the Gallup economic confidence at 8:30. Remember, this is a random sampling. It's the sensitivity of the consumer sentiment. Basically, they ask them what they feel on their current economic condition and perception, whether it's getting better or getting worse. So again, it's a random sampling. Also, we're looking for the Red Book weekly chain store sales. Also, that's something that's coming out at 10 a.m. And this is something that's been talked about within the last few weeks, and that is JOLTS, J-O-L-T-S for short, Job Opening and Labor Turnover Survey. This is something, folks, that and the consensus for that is on the JOLTS number is 4.71 million. So this number is very, very closely watched by Yellen. There were some papers over the weekend and last week that really she actually watches this more than she does the NFP numbers that came out on Friday. And what this is basically just broken down. If there's an employee at a particular company and another company posts a position, how easy is that for that employee who's currently working get that other job? Is that conversion ratio of getting that other position in another organization, not within the organization, but in the other organization? So this is something that's very, very closely monitored by Yellen, and so should we as well. So that's something that's Okay, a little bit more macro here. We have the 4-week T-bill auctions results at 11:30, 3-year note auctions at 3 p.m. Uh, Cocher Lakota speaks at 2:30, and William Dudley at 3. We have consumer credit at 3. Um, and let's see, I put Baltic dry goods falls at 1.4%, down to 1,015 points. Reason why we put it in terms of opinions, in terms of rate hikes, as we listen to these Fed governors and what they have to say, and whether it's monetary, fiscal policy, their views on the economy. Remember, these are speaking engagements. But certainly opinions are out there when the Fed should rate, what they're anticipating. So again, but until they actually raise rates, that's the that's the inflection point there. So moving on here. On the global economic front, we have UK industrial production basically unchanged. German factory orders were at down 5.7% in August, dropped most since 2009. Something that I found interesting was the World Bank over the weekend cut East Asia forecast for 2014. So 6.9 growth, China to expand at 7.4, 2014 7.2, and 2015 from 7.6 and 7.5 respectively. So again, this theme that we've been discussing for the last couple of weeks is this perception of slowing growth in China, yet growing but at a slower rate, and also this notion of negative growth, perhaps a possibility of a negative growth in the European Union, and that's something that's really closely monitored. We know about the plunging ruble. There's this morning there was an indication that over the last 2 days, the Russian central bank has been purchasing the Russian ruble. So again, a lot of concern there. Now, why is that a concern? If you're a foreign company, let's say you are a U.S. company doing business in the U.S., doing business in Russia, and the ruble is plunging, that repatriation of funds coming back into the U.S. will be subject to currency risk, plain and simple. So that's why it's just a critical moment. Critical information, and we have to really monitor how this plays out. So let's move on a little bit. Let's take a quick peek at commodities, energy, raw materials. We have crude oil down 30 cents at $90.03. They're just a little bit off those morning lows. Let's see, gasoline down 0.0118 at 2.4. Let's call it. Heating oil down 0.0076 at 2.6135, and natural gas up a penny at 3.908. And then we'll get into some of the levels in just a few minutes. We just want to continue just run through gold at 1207.90, up 60 cents. Silver 1270, excuse me, 17.33, up 11 cents. Platinum recovering a little bit from the last few days at 1262.75, up 16.75. We talked about the ruble buying by the Russian central bank. Also this morning we saw, and you'll see this in the PowerPoint, Bank of Israel buys up to $300 million worth of foreign currency in the open market. When we have these type of currency fluctuations, you have these interventions by the central banks, which I find really poignant here. So also, just as we're going through the slides here, there will be a repository on Financial Juice with respect to all of everything that we talk about. So this is something that you can always go back to and really reference during the day. Hey, what are they talking about? It was kind of interesting. Maybe there was a stock that was moving early in the morning, didn't catch it. You can always go back to that repository. So we'll get that up after the presentation. U.S. So 10-year yield 2.402 is 2.41 about 3 hours ago or so. 30-year yield 3.12. Again, we do see a steeper yield curve towards the longer maturities. A couple of interesting things here. Goldman Sachs and PIMCO indicate rate increase in treasuries with the ending of QE. They're anticipating 4% by the end of 2015, where duration is returning. Remember, with the QE purchasing more shorter-term securities, they took out duration risk out of the equation. So that's as that is ending, duration will be returning to that. Will be returning. So I think that's really critical there. A quick review of overnight markets, for example, in Asia, Nikkei was down 0.67%. Hang Seng is up 0.46%. In Europe, we're down across the board here. FTSE down 0.42%. The CAC down 1.01%, and the DAX down 0.62%. So clearly, we have a risk-off pre-market here. So one of the things before we get into the specific stocks, Milt, what I'd like to do is maybe get into some of the support levels. One of the things I'd like to bring up, and we witnessed this on Friday, a few things. Definitely volatility has returned to the market, right, Milt? And so let's go a little bit higher level first. How should a trader approach volatility, number one, and let's get into a little bit of the levels, on the ES, the NQs, YMs, VIX, and crude oil. What's your thought on that? I mean, clearly volatility is in. How does a trader anticipate, go into these markets when we have situations like this?
Well, every trader needs to go into markets, in my opinion, the same way. It doesn't matter if it's a dead day, it doesn't matter if it's a volatile day. No one really knows what the day is going to be like, so you always need to be ready. You always need to expect the worst and hope for the best, and then you take it day to day, and you sit back and you're ready for it. You don't have to worry about is it going to be a dead day? Is it going to be a day where there's going to be extreme volatility? Yesterday started off slow, and then boom. It was the sell-off started, and then the question is, were you ready? You should have been. You should be ready every morning when the bell rings. So when it comes to volatility, there should be no excuse. You should always be ready for it. You never know what could happen. So there's no reason for, in my opinion, a trader to sit back and be like, oh, I wasn't ready for this, I wasn't ready for that. You should be ready every morning. Be ready for a day where you may have no trades, a day where you may have 100 trades. You never know what the day is going to be like, but you always want to be ready for it. Let me jump into some quick levels real quickly. I'll start off with the, since we're talking about the volatility, I'll start off with the VIX. As you can see, numerous for the past week or so, we've been mentioning a couple levels in the VIX. Around the 1750 level on the upside as resistance, and the 14 level as the support. 2-3 days ago, we hit the 1750. We touched around 1798. It was a quick pop to that number, sold right off of it, closed down around 16 on that day. So the resistance is still there between the 1750 level. Yesterday, we hit a low of 1405, basically right to support that we've been mentioning for the past week or so. So 14 right now is the support levels. You have 18 as 1750 as the resistance. So we keep those numbers intact and keep those numbers on watch. Let's jump into the ES futures, the S&P futures. Our support levels on this are basically right at 1945.50 right now. That is the support on this market. We are currently at 1951, so we are in that support. We hit a low of 1944.75 this morning. So we are trading in support as of now. If that level is broken, our next ideal level of support on the S&P is around 1920s, the S&P futures. So we're watching those levels of support. Resistance right now is the 1960 and 1965 on the upside. If that level is broken, we could possibly see a 1980, which is a large level of resistance. So we're looking at those levels on the S&P futures. The NQs, NASDAQ futures, we are looking at a level on the support of about 39.90. It hit that pre-market, just like the ES futures hit support pre-market. We're looking at the 39.85, 39.85, 39.90 as support on the NQs. Resistance levels not until about low fours, 4,030, 4,025. So it's pretty broad range on the NQs. So we're just watching those few numbers. As you can see, the past few weeks have been extreme volatility. So we don't expect much action until those numbers are broken for further anticipation of what the market will possibly do. Let's jump into the YMs, the Dow futures. We are looking at, excuse me. Right now we are basically at support on the Dow. We hit support during pre-market lows around 16,800. Our resistance levels are about 16,975, 17. So we also have a broad range in the YMs. So expect to see a tradable range until these numbers are broken. It's been like that for weeks, where you may get a sudden spike lower and then recover back into the ranges. The key thing is, if it is broken, excuse me again, if levels are broken, you want to see a close below or above those levels. If a level is broken and trades back into that support range or resistance range levels, it's not like a confident break. That's what we look at. That's what we're trying to figure out. Is the move to the upside or downside a conviction move? Typically, you want to see volume. Typically, you want to see either a negative close for a break to support or a positive close for a break to the upside resistance. Until that happens, we're going to be hanging around here in these ranges. People are going to be sitting back expecting to get their directions, but right now it's range bound, and you just need to be careful. So, go ahead, George.
No, that's a great point. I want to bring up, before we get into the crude oil, and certainly crude oil is very sensitive to geopolitical and but as traders look at these range bounds, in your opinion, let's render an opinion here. What would prompt a VIX to go back into the 20s? What would prompt a major break in these support levels? Anything that's in your mind that would be absolutely unique or something unusual that really we should keep an eye on.
You need that event. You need that event that will make that move. We will talk about that GTAT that happened. Right. Yes, that disaster.
Right.
A $1.5 billion market cap company declaring bankruptcy was a shock to us all. You sit back and think to yourself, how is that possible? How was that not foreseen? How do people not think to themselves that this could possibly happen? Money was destroyed yesterday. Funds, excuse me, funds had large. This was a part of the S&P, I believe, 600. it was part of 6 or 7 ETFs, and yet this was overseen, and it makes you think, what is going on? How this was not, a how is this not a foreshadow of something down the road? Is this not? Can this not happen again? Who knows? But it just opens your eyes to the thought that, like we always said from day one here, do your due diligence and love what you own, because you never know what could happen. You could walk in and be wiped out in the matter of minutes in this business.
And that's a great point, Mel. One of the things we were talking about during the day yesterday, specifically with this GTAT, I have the daily up on this, and you can just see just the stick down clearly from yesterday. I think it literally was halted at 10, a little over $10. It opened up at around 1. So clearly, I mean, those funds, those that own that, clearly, over 90% loss in that particular holding. One of the things that we talked about was the fact that there was analysts that were covering the stock, correct, Milt?
Oh yeah, I think there were 7 or 8 analysts across the board that had a buy side with at least minimum $18, $19, $20 targets, and you sit back and you're like, are you kidding me? Like, your job is to be here and quote unquote an analyst is to analyze in equity, and you basically, all of you guys, dropped the ball. And at this point, today, we're cutting our estimates on GTAT to, neutral, or we're no longer going to be, covering the name. Of course you're not. The stock is going bankrupt, and you had a buy target of $20 on it. So in the end, you always got to think to yourself, you got to do your own work, because they're not going to be able to be putting food on your table at that point, so you can't listen to what other people are saying. You can take their advice, or take their opinions, but in the end, it's your money being put to work, and it's your decision on what to do, either buying or selling a position.
I think that's a great point. Look, we've come in our society where we have the availability of information, we have the availability of technology, but now it befalls on us to do our, as we've always said, your due diligence. Just because even an analyst is covering a particular security, is the analyst late? We've discussed that concept of this timeless concept of are analysts early or analysts late to the particular equity or more macro commodity or energy sectors. Are they late to the party a bit? So that's something that should be really studied and by the individual investor, by the trader, and having conviction in your own portfolio. I think that's really key, because once you begin to have conviction in your own portfolio, in your own trading, and what that means, I think that it'll be a more fruitful and a better existence with respect to how to trade certain a couple of these sites. Remember, GTAT was remember Apple had a big investment in GTAT, right, Milt? I mean, they build factories.
Oh yeah,
correct.
GTAT. Quick thing, Jordan. GTAT.
Please.
GTAT spent a big chunk of their money building a factory just to develop products for Apple. So, there's a lot of rumblings exactly what happened between that relationship. Many are saying that they just weren't fast enough. Many were saying that their products were not good enough for Apple. It's going to be an interesting set of events to see what exactly transpired behind the scenes on this bankruptcy. There's going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of lawsuits. The question is, what exactly happened? How a $1.5 billion company trading at over $10 can go bankruptcy overnight. So it's a fine line, but people, questions need to be answered at this point, and who knows what the answers are going to be? Who knows if you're going to like the answers that we hear as well?
Absolutely. Thanks, Milt. So what I'd like to do is, before we get into Milt, can we take a look at the crude oil levels?
Of course. Give me 1 second. Let me just put up the chart.
I'm going to get the chart up here. So we have a daily. We'll take a look at the daily, and then we'll jump in. One of the things in crude oil, Milt, and this is something that we always discuss with people we know in desks and so forth is this notion of so one is the currency, right? We've seen a tremendous fluctuation in currencies, in the U.S. dollar, various other currencies. How, with the strength of the U.S. dollar, um, how it affects other countries' production of oil. Correct? Every country needs a particular dollar amount when they're producing the oil. For example, Russia, the word is $100. For example, I believe Saudi Arabia is 80, Iran at 90, Venezuela. I think this is key, and it's a larger. Maybe a larger play here in terms of macroeconomic perspective. So, so if we could, jump in a bit on the CL and the technical analysis. We've hit some interesting levels over the last few days, right, Mel? So, talk to us a little bit what you're seeing and
Well,
what can traders anticipate here?
well, basically, we when a week or so ago we were mentioning that our levels at that point were around 95 resistance, and we had a 92 around support level. The 92 support level clearly was broken. We hit a low of 88.18 since then. We're looking as that as the current level of support, short term, not real live support. The clear support level in oil right now, if that 88 level is broken, is around $85. So we're looking at that as support. The upside resistance is now 91.50, 92, which was our previous support levels, has become resistance. So we're looking at those levels as numbers to watch on the upside. Clearly, keep an eye on the U.S. dollar. Usually dictates moves in oil. Keep an eye on overseas comments regarding them cutting productions, which clearly they are not saying they are not going to do. It's a very tough area to really get a feel on because there's so many outside influences regarding oil. All we can do here is give you some levels. Like we said, our level right now is 88 short-term support, 85 our long-term support level. 91.50, 92 has now become resistance to the upside. Keep it on that number as resistance. So that's the range we're looking at in the oil trade.
Thanks. Well, one of the things that we, in addition to this, you'll see on the PowerPoint here when we put it in the repository. Also, there are certain banks out there talking about this 86 level as well. So again, as Milton said, that 85 support. But again, these support levels, we mentioned this with a particular stock, specifically with the stock last week in Nuance. But key support and resistance levels can be influenced by outside events. So just keep that in mind. A little bit of a caveat there that just because the support is there, resistance is there. If there's something that occurs, we're certainly there. You'll see within the unusual activity newsroom as we're posting things in there, whether something's going on with ISIS and the Syria airstrikes. Is it moving into? Is it Turkey? What's the effect on Iraq? What's the geopolitical environment? You'll see that gyration in the crude oil rather precipitously. So again, just keep in mind, keep an eye on that. We're going to jump into the PowerPoint once again. So just bear with me as I toggle the screen here. So we've discussed technical analysis. We want to get into what's in the news here, and did that. Okay, so let's jump into. So we know Ebola. We want to just we've had on Friday we had a kind of an impromptu discussion on Ebola. Every day as there are more companies that may be either affected by Ebola or maybe providing any kind of biotechnology type services for treatment of Ebola. Maybe it's clothing. If you take a look at that RPT is a real estate firm, specifically on malls. So the thought process is if people are afraid to go out of their home, What's the impact on on the economy, and will they go out? Certainly, they'll need to eat, but will they go shopping? Will they, and so forth. So and we're going to review CMRX. So again, this is going to be in the repository. So I highly recommend keeping, if you have if you have a bit of a ticker on your screen, put these stocks in. They may be in play as not saying they will be in play, but they may be in play as conversations of Ebola go on throughout the day. Well, there's news. Doesn't matter what you're watching, and we'll continually post into the unusual activity into the newsroom within Financial Juice. So again, we'll continue to do that. Remember, yesterday there was the Spain case in Ebola. There was a confirmed case in Spain. We're still keeping an eye on this Dallas case. Apparently, he's in critical but stable condition. I mean, there's various levels of what that means on that.
George,
Yeah,
one quick
please,
thing.
please.
While I have my mind, going on this one right here, just a name for you guys if everyone to watch. Is the CMRX. They're providing that experimental drug that's going on in Dallas right now. The key thing to watch is if it works. If it works, this is a name where you can really look into. But the thing is, if it does not work, there's a lot of hope, a lot of expectation on this name. So if it does not work, you can see a trade there either to the up or downside. So it's something to keep a close eye on. Keep your ear to the floor. Make sure you hear what's going on. If you're starting to see the guy get better and better, and they're starting to attribute that to this drug, you're going to see some positive momentum. If you start, his health starting to deteriorate again, you may see some negative reaction to this drug because this is the drug they are currently using in the trials as experimental to see if it works. So that's a key thing to keep an eye on. Keep an ear to the ground, listen, hear what's going on, stay on top of that, and clearly, if this doesn't work, everyone's going to pop back into that TKMR again.
That's a great point, Mel, and we'll review that CMRX in just a few slides. There was a particular situation yesterday where CMRX actually flew up on that news of the Dallas case using CMRX. And remember, just a brief 30-second review exactly what Ebola is. Remember, Ebola is a hemorrhagic fever. So there's several treatments for hemorrhagic fever. So the thought process is, what companies have, manufacture biotechnology companies that, pharmaceuticals that manufacture this type of medication. That's why, again, as more companies are entering the news, the headline news of Ebola, we'll put that into the newsroom. Some of the news that's also making. So we discussed GTAT. They're going into bankruptcy. Effect on that again. Certainly funds will be affected. And I think that's just going to be a story that just really opens up over the next few days. Soda in pre-market. Soda is currently in pre-market $22.75. Guiding lower. FireEye, FEYE, announces strategic partnership in Asia Pacific Singapore telecommunications. Currently in pre-market at $29.53. Apple, B of A, Merrill reinstates with a buy in 120-point a price target. So they're discussing the super cycle of the iPhone. Now remember, we talked about this notion of analysts, and we're going to keep on discussing this as we see upgrades and downgrades. Are they early? Are they late? What's the consensus? And it's what we're anticipating sometime for this week. We'll have a speaker come on who's really knows the balance sheets and where analysts are anticipating Apple and so forth. So hopefully we'll have him on this week. That's something to look forward to. Let's move on a little bit. Amazon to face EU antitrust probe over Luxembourg tax deal. Amazon currently in pre-market, looks like 321. Twitter logged off strategy could double sales by 2017. Says Deutsche Bank keeps a buy rating on Twitter with a $60 price target. Twitter, we have Twitter currently at $53.44 in pre-market. Um, NVAX initiated with an overweight at JP Morgan, 7 cent, $7 price target. Currently at $4.26 in pre-market. Um, also, ICPT intercept initiated with an outperformer JP Morgan. Securities $500 price tag. Is that ICPT? Yeah, $500 price target. Pre-market 236. Some other news. Just some. Again, this is a little bit of crude oil effect. Geopolitical. Iran won't cut crude prices or wage price war with Saudi Arabia, according to Iran semi-official Mehr news agency, which just interesting. TCS and pre-market, we have currently the container stores tumbled to record low. Same store sales slide. Currently $18.75 in pre-market. We talked about soda. We'll look at it again quickly at $22.65. EZPW. So let's see. EZPW announces refocused strategy, sees fourth quarter earnings per share results missing expectations. Currently at $8.35 in pre-market. That's down from a close of yesterday. Looks like just under maybe 990 where it finished. A few more news. We saw this here. We discussed this. Bank of Israel buys up to $300 million of foreign currency in open market, according to the dealers. Again, we've seen this. We've discussed this. I think this is just a story. We'll continue to see this notion of central banks buying particular currencies, maybe buying their own currencies, certainly with the dollar strength. Remember, the concern for the central banks is capital flows. We discussed that last week. Capital flows, what that means for the economy, and also foreign investment. Because if the currency's critically low, what that means on the repatriation aspect of bringing it back to that native currency. So again, monitoring that end of it. ISR announces early success for young Peruvian girl utilizing Cesium-131 in first stereotactic implant for inoperable brain cancer. So again, our ISR, and let's bring up ISR just a little bit. ISR is just a crazy little stock, is it not? It's not the most eloquent statement, but it tends to be a bit of a player, does it not?
Of course, you have the groups that always watch certain names, and this is one of those darlings. You had this stock went from 44 cents in the beginning of December to in March hitting $3.77, all on hype, nothing concrete. So this is a name that is always going to be in play. This morning, you had another PR. Yet again, it was nothing concrete. It was a PR. It's an interesting headline, but it's a possible fluff PR. So who knows the reaction? But right now, it's clear to the upside. It closed at 138 yesterday, trading at 175.77 pre-market. It's one of those names where people always look at, people always watch. They love to trade it. They love to manipulate it. It's a name where you have to be careful on both sides of the game, and it's something where you may see that momentum continue throughout the day, or even continue for the next couple of days. If those headlines start to be repeated here and there, you can get some movements within a couple day period. But this is a darling for a lot of people. A lot of people love the name. They mention it a lot with the I believe it's the brain calcium type seeds. It's a very interesting story, but like I said, it's a name that is manipulated, as we can see. It went from 377 back to $1.38 on nothing. So the manipulation is there, but it's a play that many love. So it's gonna be one of those volatile names today.
Things. And one of the other stocks I wanted to bring up, and it's always in the news. It's there's and it has two large players in it. And we talk about the large players in it, and I just put this up there. It's Herbalife, HLF, the hiring an ex-FTC commissioner, heavyweight, to get the house in order, could be part of the FTC deal. Now, one thing for traders, one thing for investors, when they have an Ackman, when they have an icon involved in these names, those are some rather large players, correct? So I would think caution would be really upfront on the minds of even people that are thinking of playing HLF, correct?
Of course, and this situation, where it's kind of interesting because you have Ackman on one side, who is a excuse me, a big bear on the name, and then you have Carl Icahn, who is a gigantic bull on the name. On Icahn's camp, you have a few other big guys that are joining on board. So it's like it's a tug of war at this point. When you ever play tug of war, one side starts winning, the other side starts winning, one side starts to win, and that's what we had here. Initially, Ackman was wrong. Icahn was kicking butt. The stock was making new highs. Then Ackman was right again. The stock started breaking new lows. So it's a tough play, but it seems with this hiring, a lot of desks that I've been speaking with is, it seems like they're doing that because they want to get on the good side of the FTC. So they're bringing in an ex-commissioner. They're thinking to themselves, this could be a step in the right direction. Let them see that we're not, one of those firms that, what are they called, George? The MLM type firms, pyramid scheme type
multimedia
firms.
marketing, right?
So
right.
They're like, let's bring in this
Multi-level
FTC.
marketing, right?
Let's take care of that. Let's drop a few eyebrows. So it's a play on a mental way as well as saying this is what we're our future is. We're going to make sure we do everything the right way. But they're also bringing in the person in to say, we believe that our company is legit, and this is one way of showing it by bringing in an ex-FTC commissioner.
Thanks. And one of the things that I want to bring up, and before we get into getting into the syndicates and Top Insider, one of the things that we want to bring up, and we always talk about this, is how does a trader play a particular news item? How does it, whether it's an unusual option call, a look, maybe it's a large call or put buy, maybe it's a large insider purchase during the day, maybe, as you see on your screen now, it's a news item, for example, yesterday. So really, a trader has several options to play particular news items, particular items during the trading day. So this is where we want to get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty. So for example, yesterday, 1:47 p.m., we detected a headline, and we put this into the newsroom. Ebola patient Thomas Dunk remains in stable critical condition, is receiving investigational medication, Brincidofovir, CMRX, right? So you see where the arrow is, and you see the spike up within, remember, this is 1 minute candles, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you see over the next, 5 to maybe 12 minutes, a huge tick up. Now, one of the things, what is a trader to do? So certainly a trader can choose not to do anything, right? I mean, surely if you say to yourself, I'm just going to stay away from the Ebola names, but I'll watch them, but I'll stay away from in terms of trading them. Certainly, that's entirely your choice. But in terms of traders that we speak with, they love to be in these names because they move. You can, um, position yourself within the particular trade, and you're looking for profit, right? That's the end result here. So you can either on the news, buy on the news, and watch these resistance and support levels. Also, what some traders do is they see the move up and they determine, well, maybe I didn't catch it quickly on the move up. I'm going to take the reversal of that. I'm going to go short from, we see that creating a high, 33.90. I'm going to take the short on that for a short amount of time. Now, caution on that, both on the long and the short side, and that is, remember it's new, so you have to make sure you know where your stop losses are. You have in place how you want to actually trade this, and if there's any other news coming out. So certainly, one, don't do anything. Watch the stock. Number two, try to do what you can to get into the particular position quickly based on that information, on the directional move. Number three, excuse me, wait for the move to be completed and then take the reversal of that move. Okay, what you see is at the high, we see another tick in volume. So really there's various ways that you can possibly trade these particular bits of information. So I wanted to bring that up. Anything to any words of wisdom in terms of, so we brought up, certainly three ways, right? Do nothing. One is catch it quickly on the way up or down, initial short or long, and take the reversal. Option three is take the reversal of the actual move. But really the caveat here is really see if there's any other moves, see if there's any other news that's coming out after that, correct? Especially when you're playing these particular news items. Any thoughts on that? Any other anything that's going through your mind?
Well, when you're thinking of trading headlines, it's mostly all instinct, in my opinion. Though I've been, seeing and following headlines for quite a while, I must say, and it's usually on an instinctual basis where you see a headline, you believe it's noteworthy, you believe that it's a headline that will actually move that stock or move a market, especially when that sector has been in vogue. Clearly, everyone's talking about Ebola. Clearly, the names will move on headlines. If you see a headline in Ebola and you believe your source, it's all about the sources. There's many places where these days where you can get information, but you have to make sure it's the right information. You can get information all across the board on social media. The question is it reliable? Not, you have to be able to understand and weed through all the garbage and find the ones that actually work. Nowadays, anyone with a keyboard and a mouth or a keyboard and fingers can type something on social media and make it seem like it's information that's reliable. Not so. You have to be careful. You have to, understand the sources, understand the headline, and then think to yourself, is this an actionable one? And make sure you're quick. Especially nowadays with these algos and computers, you're never going to beat them, but you always want to join the party sometimes. To the downside of what George mentioned as well is sometimes the headlines are misconstrued. So you think to yourself, what, that headline really does not make sense. Something is not right. Maybe they got it wrong. That's when your instincts and intelligence comes into play as well. You read the headline, you think to yourself, that's not right. Something's not right here. Instead of, participating on the upside, you do the contrary and you go to the downside. And that usually sometimes works as well. It's all about understanding the headline. It's all about understanding the risk behind each headline news trade and then acting on that, either to the upside or downside. Evaluate it. Bring in your instincts, make your decision, and go with the game. Otherwise, sit back and do nothing and just watch and learn. Every trade is not a missed opportunity. Every trade is something where you either learn or you trade it. If you're not going to trade it, you learn from it, and that is always just as valuable as making money sometimes. George?
Thanks, Mel. Let's as we're beginning to open is about 11 minutes ago. 11 minutes to go. Let's have a real quick run through the numbers. Futures down 8.25, so definitely risk off this morning at 1948. So quite a bit lower than earlier in the morning. Crude oil at 89.94, down 40 cents. The 10-year at 2.391, so we went below that 2.4 yield. So again, really monitoring that. Let's go into the top insider transactions. Bear with us. Let me. Where are we here? Okay, so OMN. CEO purchases 23,000 shares at $5.40. Fold, we keep on seeing Fold, so again, what it means for the long term, still remains to be seen, but it is interesting to see, a lot of the insider purchases here. STRN, 10% owner purchases 18,000 shares at $4.95. STRN. Where we're really no movement yet in the morning. INTX, 10% owner purchased 13,000 shares. No movement yet. AVNW, we have at owner 63,000 shares at $1.75. IVAC, we have director purchases 56,000 shares, and OPK, we have 10,000 shares purchased by the CEO. A couple of things on this that's rather interesting. Remember, when you're seeing directors, they're not owners, they're not CEOs, they're middle management purchasing with their own money, clearly these particular shares. So that's, again, keeping that in mind. And throughout the day, as we're detecting these bits of information, this will go into the newsroom. And again, all this information, it will be in the repository as day goes on. And at the end of this, you'll see this leading indicators. We feel that it's really important to keep an eye on leading indicators, 6 months out, and why it's important to keep an eye on this on these particular indicators. So a couple of other things before we let you go here. On the syndicate side, remember, syndicates is secondary offerings, mixed shelves. Mixed shelves means that it's both equities, fixed income, convertibles. They're looking for more financing, and what they will do with that particular financing. Typically, it means that it's dilutive, meaning it'll be a typically negative for the security in terms of price movement. So let's get into these a little bit. We'll run through these, and then we'll take another check of where the futures are before the open. We're coming up pretty close here. BBEP, 14 million share units reoffered at $18.64. Pre-market, we're looking $18.38. BURL. Holder secondary sale 8 million shares. Pre-market, we're looking at $37.90. CLD mixed files, mixed shelf. Remember, we talked about that equities, secondary equities, convertibles, fixed incomes. It's mixed. A variety of securities to seek additional funding. CLD, nothing moving in pre-market as of now. Dynegy selling 22.5 million shares to help fund acquisition. Currently $30.80. EARN files $750 million mixed shelf. Nothing yet in pre-market. GM Certainly, General Motors files mixed shelf registration, currently at 33.10 in pre-market. KOS in Blackstone Warburg to sell $15 million shares. KOS in pre-market $9.40. NWBO. We have could be some reports 11.5 million in financing. Uh, $5.10. And then just last thing is the 13Ds filings. So BNNY Jamco Investors reports 8.75% stake. Remember, these are filings that are sent to the SEC, mandatory. So this is again, when you see we see BNNY at 46.11, so certainly higher in pre-market. ADES, we have Coliseum Boost stake 9.6%. Nothing yet in pre-market, and URRE Gagnon reports 4.9% stake. So again, reason why we monitor that is where's the bigger money, where are the larger funds, where are the activist investors placing their money. So again, interesting to detect these, and as we detect these throughout the day, we'll bring them into the newsroom. So before we go, let's have a quick run through where the markets are and where we are in Europe. Europe FTSE down 0.42%, CAC down 1.08%, DAX in Germany down 0.54%. Futures down 8.25 at 1947.25. Did break through that 1950 level. 10-year 2.389. We did go below that 2.4 level, and also crude oil down 59 cents at 89.75. So again, risk off in heading into the markets. We thank you for joining us. This has been Unusual Activity, powered by Financial Juice with George Avedon and Milton Marmonides. We wish you happy hunting.